Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I pray that you guys are doing well. This is a day that I want to talk about love school. Actually, talking about loving or learning to love the right way from a biblical perspective. And I actually want to bring you into the Bible, if you don't mind, in Matthew 22, starting at verse 35. It says, "Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked Jesus a question, tempting him and saying, Master, which is the great commandments in the law, or commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." Now, this is an interesting text because there's more revealed in this text about loving or love, on every front, in any capacity, from brotherly to family to romantic. There's more revealed in this passage about how to love than we have gleaned. First thing I want you to notice is that in the context of this, Jesus is being challenged by these religious fanatics, and they're asking him which of the laws is the greatest. And I think it's like 669 laws that the Jews observe. And so that's a lot of laws. That's a whole lot of laws to remember, much, less prioritized. So they ask Jesus, well, which of the laws is the greatest? And Jesus says, love the Lord thy God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. He says, this is the greatest commandment. And then he says, there's a second part to this. And it's interesting that he goes into a second part because they asked, which is the singular greatest law? And Jesus says, love the Lord with all your heart. But then he says, there's a second part to this. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, the interesting thing about this is that if we can get, and I want you to hear me because there are a lot of people today who are depressed because of broken love affairs, broken hearts, feelings of abandonment. People have just not lived up to what they said they would be. And I think this text is going to help a lot of people because if you can master the principles that are laid down in these verses, it will position every one of us into a healthy place in terms of love relationships. And most of us are, find ourselves in broken positions because our love relationships have failed or are failing us. And the reason these broken love relationships are hurting us so much is because there is a lack of balance in terms of understanding how to love. Okay, now let's dive in. First thing he says is in verse 37, you shall love the Lord thy God with all your heart, all of your soul, all of your mind. Your heart speaks of your inner man, your spirit, psychologists might call it the subconscious. He says with all of your soul, your emotions, your will, your choices, so forth and so on, and with all of your mind. And then he says, this is the first and great commandment. Now, if we mastered verse 37 in our lives, if we mastered verse 37, if we loved God with all of our hearts, all of our souls, and with all of our minds, there's not anything left or remaining for anyone else to destroy or to break. When you've invested all of your love, your heart, your soul, your mind into God, it means that there's no part of you that remains, that an individual can come into your life and wreck you emotionally, destroy your life, break because you've invested everything in God. But here's the reality. Most of us have not really invested all of ourselves in God. We attempt to create love affairs with people before we have mastered our love relationship with God. And whenever you put anything ahead of God, you then establish the potential for destruction, deception, deceit, dysfunction. And so now you have it. This is why most of our relationships are not succeeding. It's because they're out of order. You're trying to love a man ahead of your loving God, and because you've put the man in God's place, the man now breaks your heart, and he does not have the capacity to fix it. So Jesus says the first thing in love school is, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind. This is the first, and this is the greatest commandment. So before you run behind a man, a woman, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a fiance, a husband, a wife, you should pause and you should give attention to your love affair, your love relationship with God. When your love relationship with God is in proper order, it means that you are, what's the word I'm looking for? Insulated. You're insulated from all of the incidents of life because I've invested all of myself in God. It means that I have given all of myself to the one that supplies everything I need. And because I've invested all of myself in God, when I come to a place where I engage a relationship with you, if you turn out not to be what I thought you would have been, should have been, portrayed yourself to be, it does not break my heart because my heart is given to God. I don't give a man, I don't give a woman my heart. I don't give a woman or man my spirit. I don't give a woman or man all that's me. I love my wife, Lisa, through the context of my love relationship with God. This empowers me to be the best husband, and it also keeps me in a healthy place where if Lisa goes off the rails, it's not going to destroy me psychologically, emotionally. It'll hurt, but I can get through it. I can get over it. Why? Because all of me is invested in God, the source. Because Lisa's not my source. I'm not her source. I'm a resource. God is actually ultimately the source. But when you don't have when you've not, like a lot of you that are in full-blown grief over some relationship that has failed, if you really stop and think about it, you've not really given your heart to God like you should have. And you're pursuing these relationships from a very unhealthy place. Because when you've not given your complete heart, all of your heart, your soul, your mind to God, it means that you are pursuing love affairs from a place of need. I need a man. I need a woman. I need a boyfriend. I need a girlfriend. I need a husband. I need a wife. I need. But when you have it in proper perspective, in proper order, and you've made God your all, God is all you need. It's the truth. Now watch this. he says here in Matthew 22:37, love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind. This is the first and great commandment. Verse 39, he says, watch this. And the second part of this, Jesus introduces a second part. The person asked him, what is the single greatest commandment? And Jesus gives him what seems like two, but it's really not two. It's really not two commandments. It's one in the same. It's one in the same. He says, and the second part of this is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Now, when you first read that, you can misunderstand it because it sounds like the text is saying love God first with all, and then it's saying love your neighbor. But listen to what it says completely. It says, and the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, which means what? You have to love yourself to love your neighbor. So Jesus' love school goes like this. Love God with all of your heart, your soul, your mind. Then love yourself. And out of the context of your self-love, love your neighbor. So when we look at this, now we're understanding why so many people are heartbroken and depressed on a day like today when the world, the world celebrates love or whatever we call it. And I don't have a love interest. What you mean you don't have a love interest? God has been longing for your love. You have tried and attempted to love everybody else but yourself. Most of you have tried to master and have miserably failed at trying to love other people before you have attempted to learn to love you. You've tried to get to know everybody else and you don't even know yourself. I think this light is too bright. So we're flunking, really when you stop and think about it, we are flunking on the first two principles of love as Jesus taught it. Most of us are not loving God with all. This is why we're constantly heartbroken. Most of us do not love ourselves. Not even taking the time to love yourself. This is why a lack of self-love is really the reason why you're so depressed. It's because you don't know how to be an individual. This is something I talk about quite a lot. You do not know how, you have not learned to be an individual. And when you're not an individual, you do not know how to be content with yourself, by yourself, because you have not learned to love yourself. You can only love your neighbor to the extent that you truly love yourself. See, I know how to treat my wife because I know how I desire to be treated. Because I have self-love, I know how to love her. There are things that I don't want her to do to me, so I don't do them to her. The self-respect that I have is the same respect or greater that I have for my wife. I treat people a certain way because I expect to be treated a certain way. I love me a certain way, so I love people the same way I love me. But most folk have not learned self-love. And you're venturing out and you're trying to create these love affairs without a real foundation. Like some of you that are watching me and listening to me now, quite honestly, you just need to go through the pain. You need to just, you're almost like a junkie. You're like a love junkie. You just need to go through the pain of separation, of disconnection, and get back to the basics. You know, your questions are, how do I get over this? It hurts so bad. This is how you develop all of these soul ties. You develop these soul ties because you attempt love out of order. You develop soul ties because you attempt love out of order. And so what happens is you go into these love affairs expecting a person to be your source of joy, your source of peace, your source of identity, your source of esteem, you know, just your source, to be everything to you that God should be. And when the person proves to be human, maybe even subhuman, some of y'all catch that, it destroys you. And it destroys you because you did not have a foundation. Your life has not been built on the right foundation. You've built your life on the pursuit of other people's approval, other people's acceptance, other people's affection, and when they withhold that from you, they can control you. Thus you have a soul tie because there's a void. When this person leaves your life, though in your mind you conclude that this person was not good for me anyway, your brain, your spirit tells you this person was not good for you, but then your brain, your carnal mind tells you, I can't do without him. And the reason you can't do without him is because when he exits the place that God is supposed to fill, you have not welcomed God into that space of your life. And so you keep filling it or attempting to fill it with people. This is how you have all of these different love affairs. This is why you're not content with pursuing your life and your purpose, and you're constantly depressed over you don't have a man. It's because your love is out of order. When you fall in love with God, it's impossible to fall completely in love with God and not be married to your purpose. And when you're married to your purpose, you pursue your purpose with everything that's within you, like Adam did, like Eve did. And then at the appointed time, God brings the right person that is suitable, that fits your life and your future. He brings that person into your life. But most of us can't even get to that point where God can bring the right person into our lives because we're so desperate to fill that void in our souls that God is ultimately to fill, that we keep introducing the wrong people into our lives. So God really rarely has the opportunity to bring the right people because the space and the place is always filled with the wrong people because we've concocted. This is why we have so many divorces. It's because we're loving out of order. And we're marrying people that we're hoping are going to be everything to us that God is supposed to be, and then they prove not to be, and then we become another statistic. We become another broken person. We're another person that's on all of these pills to manage our anxiety. We're another person that doesn't know how to live and be, you know, without somebody on my arm or on my side. It's because we're loving out of order. We're to love God with all, and then we're to love ourselves. You're supposed to love you. You got to love you. Now, you know, that doesn't mean that you become conceited or egotistical or whatever, you know, other description we can find. But it does mean you have to have a very high and healthy self-view. You have to have a very high and healthy self-view. Like for a woman, I think it's important for a woman to articulate, to say to herself, you bad, you're beautiful. You know, I mean, talk to yourself. Have a full-blown conversation with yourself about how on point you are. You don't need to wait for somebody else to tell you that. As a man, I have to remind myself, man, you got it together. You were born in the world for this. Sometimes, you know, the messages from the world try to enter into my brain and try to sabotage my destiny and my purpose. And as a man, I have to talk myself up and say, man, you bad dude. You can do this. You can do this. I don't need anybody else because I have what? Self-love. I have self-love. And I have my love for God. I am completely and totally in love with God. And out of that context, he's empowered me to love myself. And from there, watch this, I'm able to love my neighbor as I love me. See, when you're balanced in your love life, if a person chooses to walk out of your life, you release them. I mean, you know, it may hurt, you may be disappointed, but it's not going to be the end of the world. When a person chooses to leave your life, you release them, you let them go. When a person has not been in your life, like for instance, I released this program, Transcending the Father Wound. When a person has not been in your life, like your father, you turn inward. You go to God, who is the ultimate Father and who's always been there, and you invest your whole and complete heart in him. And then out of that context, he teaches you how to love you. And then from there, you're able to even forgive your father who wasn't there, because you love him as you love yourself. You're able to forgive yourself. So now you're empowered. So as we go forth today, man, let's keep this thing in perspective. And let's look at this completely. He says, second is like unto it, Matthew 22:39, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Now, what does he mean by that? He says all of those 669 laws you legalistic Jews have been trying to keep and failing to keep. If you master this, you love God with all your heart, love yourself, and then love your neighbor as you love yourself. He says you'll please God. So the key, watch this, listen to this very carefully. The key to a wholesome, balanced, healthy, and fulfilled life according to God is bringing your love life in order. Loving God, loving me, loving my neighbor. He says on this, all of the stuff that the prophets wrote about, if you can do these things, you will please God. So I'm done. Father, I thank you for this time that I've had to speak into the lives of so many people. And I ask you now, dear Father, to bring healing to every broken heart. Because there are many, dear Father, today that are struggling in their own souls because so many things are out of order and they're relying on people to be to them what only you can be. God, bring us back to the basics and teach us to love you with all, and then to love ourselves, and then, Father, to love others out of that context. And God, I give you praise and honor for the great work that you're doing in so many hearts and in so many lives. In Jesus' name. Hey, this is R.C. Blakes. If this is your kind of thing, subscribe. Now, let me say this. Those of you who've subscribed to my program, Transcending the Father Wound, that's my first online program. And so we're working some kinks out. And I know that, you know, a couple of people like myself, I struggle with technology and I don't necessarily know how to hit all of the buttons and to maneuver certain programs and all of that. And so, such is the case with my program, Transcending the Father Wound. If you're having problems with the program, email us at pastorrcblakes@gmail.com. I'm actually putting together a team of people that will be almost like a customer service, that when you have struggles, or if you have struggles accessing the program, there's some things we're looking at in the program that we're going to try to tweak and make adjustments to make it more fluid. But don't for a minute think that, you know, you purchased this program and now you're on your own. No, 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 no. We're going to get it right, and if we don't get it right, we're going to give you your money back and still find a way. But I want you to write down pastorrcblakes@gmail.com. If you have any struggles with the program, those of you that have not registered for the program, you can go to pastorrcblakes.com, and Transcending the Father Wound is there. It's 5 sessions, and each session has 3 components. My teachings, the brief comments of a licensed professional counselor, and then a conversation between my wife, Lisa, and I, relative to her life and to her experiences with the father wound. It's about 5 to 6 hours of content. So I love you all. I thank God for you. I truly do. And I appreciate you. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in Atlanta in a couple of weeks. Those of you, for Queenology, for those of you who may be wondering what I'm talking about, those of you in Las Vegas, Queenology is just about sold out for Las Vegas. That's happening in April. Once it sells out, I'll open up another city. But I just thank you all for all of your support, and I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. You can go to Amazon, pick up my books, Queenology, Father-Daughter Talk, Imperfectly, Holy, Wisdom for Women in Ministry, Soul Ties. And if you desire to have the combos with the book and the workbook of Father-Daughter Talk or Queenology, you can go to my store, which you can access through my website, pastorrcblakes.com, and just hit on the store, and you can get bundles with the workbook and the book itself. The workbooks are not on Amazon, but the workbooks and the books are on my personal store. So I love you all. Thank you so much for giving me your ear today, and just know somebody's praying for you, and somebody loves you. Somebody loves you. God bless you. Talk to you real soon now. Bye-bye.